Thank you for watching and listening to the Chris in Retro podcast. Part 2 starts now.
Do people get your Chris's good intentions? And it sure sounds like they do. Sure sounds like they do. I mean, you met me shortly, not long ago, and here I am doing your podcast.
Yeah.
I hope that's a display of worthy intent that you can put in your column that, hey, Ed Wallace is doing my podcast. We just kind of met.
Yeah, I'm pretty honored that you came on.
Worthy intent.
Pretty honored that you came on. I think that part of this is that, we have to make sure that consistency is there when people are looking towards us for that. I think we lose that worthiness, so to speak, when we vacillate based on any pressure that's put on us. I have 7 leadership tenets that I followed through that I got when I worked back at Johnson & Johnson. They had us kind of look through, who we were as a leader in a program I went through. And I forged 7 of them and I've stuck with them. But one of the ones is I make sure that I shoulder the fire responsibility and share the wealth of victory. What I mean by that is that every single thing that comes rolling downhill, I'm not going to dump on my people. It'll be an appropriate distribution if I feel like there's going to be a reward and our promises as a team. But my job is not to throw fire at them every time it comes at me. It's because I could have 7 great days, but the minute I'm reacting to some leadership decision and dumping fire on them because of that, the worthy intent and any of that goes out the window, in my opinion.
We talk about the relational ladder. You start sliding. We use the ladder as our model because you can go up or down a ladder. You can go up or down a relationship. So that's one of the reasons we use that model. And while you're in your executive role, it's to not protect everyone from something that's coming down that way, but how do we facilitate it in a way that can be productive?
Right.
That's the way a mature leader looks at things. So
we've moved away from they're a sales team, and I know team sports for me mean a lot, but it doesn't always resonate with others. For me, as a sales community, that means that we are together solving the problems we've committed and promised to do. It doesn't exonerate us from our objectives. It certainly doesn't change our promises to each other to hold each other up in the middle of this. But as a community, we're solving problems. And that's something I think is a good attitude for my team, at least. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, you're in one of the, I would think probably, if you're coaching, it's one thing to maintain your own relationships. It's another thing to coach other people to help them maintain their relationships. How do you keep the stamina up as a professional, and how do you help others keep their stamina up? Because I can't imagine every business relationship you have, even as good as you are, is glowing.
Well, from the highest level, I have a commitment to being around as long as I can for Brett. So we have a great family structure. We have an amazing younger son, Grant, as we talked about him earlier, the helicopter kid. And I know that Brett will be in good hands. But I want to be around, and Laurie wants to be as much as we can. So at my age, I have so many friends saying, when are you going to retire? And I say, I'm just getting started. Mm-hmm. And so I get started with a healthy run every day, bunch of push-ups and sit-ups. I'm finished all that by 5:30. I get a bunch of things done, work-related, before anybody gets in here. And I've always had that kind of routine. And I really feel at this stage, I'm as good as I've ever been when it comes to getting on a podcast with someone at your level, Chris, and having this discussion. There's an old saying: once you figure out all the answers, they change the questions. I think I know a lot of the answers now, and I feel that I have great opportunities to share all these different experiences I've had. I've trained 29,000 salespeople. I think I might have picked up a couple of things that can help some other salespeople along the way, and that's not being egotistical. It's factual, and I never know what might come out of me, or what anecdote I might have, or what story I might have, and it's so cool to see. That's an idea, like relational GPS. So we never talked about relational GPS, but relational GPS is a simple tool, a simple idea that you can use in any business relationship, in any personal relationship. If I can understand Chris's business and personal goals, his passions, his causes, things he really cares about, and or his struggles, and every human being has those. That's the roadmap to end a relationship. And we get there by asking questions, by being curious. And I always say, well, how do you keep track of everything you know about people? I go, look, everything they share with you is a goal, passion, or struggle. It's pretty hard for it to deviate. And the more GPS we locate, the better the chances are we can advance the relationship. So I come up with ideas like that, and I see people taking notes and responding and putting them into their CRMs. And like, you know what? The stuff I do is some pretty good value. So that's what keeps me going. That's what gives me that energy.
So you got your message is so strong. People are actually willing to use the CRM. That's pretty powerful. That's enough to bring you in. Most companies,
if you get them to use the CRM, you're doing pretty well, as you know.
That should be your number one selling point. I think that you talked about 29,000 salespeople, and when we talked earlier, 300 leaders you'd met. And then you just mentioned how, you think you got all the answers and people change the questions. I think the reason you're successful as an observation early on is because you stay connected with the people that are asking the questions. I see a lot of people that do consulting type work, and they rest on their laurels. They come at it with a system. We talked early on about a system and how people, use measurable actions required for sales, and there's different stages and things. And I think those are valuable things, but there's more to that story, and this relationship selling and this work that you do, I think is more to the story. To your point, the questions keep getting asked and they do change. There's nuances that need to be answered. And I think that your investment in people and the way that you approach your business is why you're successful at what you do and engaging candidly. So that, I think it reveals itself just based on the number of people that you've talked to. One thing that you bring up a lot is this road less traveled. It's a desirable thing. And honestly, for somebody like me, we can romanticize that a little bit. I like the idea of being a little bit of a nomad and finding new paths. But when we're first deciding what our journey is, even before we even understanding if we have a calling or a purpose or anything, we're still a little lost. So how do you find your path? How do you hear the cues around you to say, it's time to make a change? You did it 45. How do you, other than, you're getting everything scared out of you by your son in a helicopter, what are the other cues that you would have seen before that? Because there had to have been other things.
Oh my gosh, I could take you all the way back to my grade school basketball coach who did some things that the kids thought were not necessarily within integrity with us as his players in relation to the way he represented us or things he said about us behind our backs. And I quit the team and joined a public school team, if you could believe that, Chris.
Wow.
So I always took a path like I left accounting after 3 days and jumped and started bartending and going to grad school because I knew after investing 4 years in college, it was the wrong road for me. And I think if you think about a ladder, nobody puts us on a ladder, Chris. We've got to get on a ladder ourselves. Now, someone might be stabilizing it for us, but we've got to take the first step. And we talk a lot about that in our programs, in my keynotes, in my books, that no one puts you on a ladder. You've got to take that step. Think about your journey, Chris. You did a lot of the first steps all by yourself. Something told you, I've got to lift up my leg and get on this ladder, or I've got to get off of the path I'm on another path. So I think it's really a self-awareness. And again, I'm not a psychology person. I'm an accountant / salesperson who just tends to really like people and interact with them. But I think that the awareness that we can take that step in any direction, it could not be the right direction. Steve Jobs, who wasn't the greatest with people, he had a philosophy, though. He said, have a vision and don't worry about the steps to get there. Once you get there, look back and see what happened. And, have these fuzzy visions, be motivated to approach them, and put your leg on that ladder and start climbing.
Yeah, I think that fear is a big inhibitor to that for a lot of reasons. I think of your transition there, and there's many people that have this like career dissatisfaction. They may not have been earlier on where they're doing a college change, but it's a big change to make a shift. Like if you had made that later, And the bartending option wouldn't have sustained you. You wouldn't have the freedom to do graduate school. Fear is a big one, and then you look at interpersonal relationships. If you've got a marriage that's not working, and how do you deal with that, and the fear to take the step to fix that for whatever's healthy for you. Recovery, if you follow a 12-step program, the very first one is to recognize you're powerless, your life's unmanageable. That's a fear to get to a place to say, I see this now what? Sometimes that first step is just an acknowledgement to grab a hold of the rails of the ladder, that is the direction to go. And fear is usually what keeps us from even taking that stab at that, because it means we've got to leave something that we're comfortable with, even though it might be something that we know is destroying us.
And if you think about a ladder, I love your commentary on that, Chris. If you think about a ladder, it's movement upward. Mm-hmm. It's lifting ourselves. I do it in terms of business relationships, so it's a lot more clinical and maybe a lot less emotional. But for our friends who have addictions and challenges and troubles with their personal lives, how do they lift themselves? Because I think you have to lift yourself somehow to make a change, to do something different. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not Dr. Phil, so I'm not qualified to comment on these things other than just all the experiences I've had. I mean, because our roads less traveled are really the sum set of everything we've done and seen and think about and go forward. That's why the book is a bit of an oxymoron in that, maybe that's the wrong word, paradox. I can't think of the right descriptor, but we're all on a road less traveled. Yet when you hear the title, it sounds like, oh, there's this road that no one else goes on. He's right, because it's our road.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think in certain elements of life, like in the recovery journey, I think the ladder is more scaffolding, because there's a few steps you have to take on your own. Or a
lattice.
Yeah, you kind of climb up on your own for a minute, and then you got to settle in on a plateau with a bunch of other people around you to tell you what to do next.
Right.
So I think for us, there's some days you're not climbing, you're just kind of wandering around on a plank for a little while to figure out where to put the paint. But I definitely appreciate that thought on it. I know that you profess you're not qualified in that area, but I've always maintained that there's a lot of crossover to each one of these things when we're talking about growth. Whether it's your professional environment or if it's your personal life, they all have a lot of similar earmarks. Some of it is recognizing what you do have control over and what you don't. Focusing on the things that you're trying to get done. Stay laser focused on real measurable objectives. That's the truth. And even in recovery, I think a lot of people lose their way because their recovery is about how they feel. Same thing in the professional environment. I've seen a lot of salespeople destroy their careers based on emotion and not based on measurable outcomes and setting realistic goals for themselves.
Yeah, and I think I have a phrase in one of the books: our success is by, with, and through other people. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a recovery process, a sales process, the sales professional is not going to be successful if they can't somehow find a way into a relationship with some decision maker or some influencer or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think you've used the word nuance a couple of times. That's what the road less traveled is about, nuance. Mm-hmm. The relational ladder is about nuance. Everybody on that ladder, everybody on that road has different GPS. And we have different GPS. I had, you talked about an Uber driver earlier when we were talking before we got on, and my great friend Max is featured in 3 of my books, and the ultimate cab driver, right? The ultimate experience for people. If you think about it, how do we create a great experience for other people? And we're not going to advance a business relationship. We're not going to make a sale. We're not going to get to a goal. We're not going to have a good personal life unless, in most cases, we're having it with someone else. Mm-hmm. And that gets to 3 qualities. There's 3 qualities that go into I'd say they go into every relationship. So I'll cross over and be Dr. Phil again. There's credibility. We need to be believable for that other person to want to spend time with us. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Then once they spend time with us, now you can build trust. That's integrity. So if you actually picture a Venn diagram, Chris. You got credibility here, integrity here, authenticity, your favorite quality right here. When those three come together, they form what we call relationship capital. That's people and money. That's what makes business go around. And I think you can apply those just as well to anything you're experiencing in your personal life. You got to meet someone, find something in common. You need to start trusting each other. And the sooner you can be authentic and vulnerable and all those great things, that's when you build a great relationship.
Yeah, authenticity is important to me for a lot of reasons, because if I'm not being authentic, I can't expect other people to be. And if I'm not being authentic and somebody else is, there's too many moving parts for me to be successful in this interaction. So I start with a baseline that I can give us some concrete in the conversation. I know I'm being real with whoever it is I'm working with. And in some cases, especially with my background, society is not quite ready to accept that I'm so open about, my history with addiction, and yet still willing to be wildly successful if I can be in business. I strive for both of those, sobriety and success in my professional environment. And I'm not ashamed. I'm sad about stages, but I'm not ashamed of it. And that's a difference. So I think that, when I look at interactions with individuals like you, you're tremendously encouraging for somebody like me, because we can just be performers. We can be better. We can hear new ways to be stronger that isn't always centrally focused on our troubled season. Now we can start talking about where are we headed, what's the possibility of who we were and who we are. And the same thing, I look at salespeople. Sometimes we inherit sales organizations that have had, managers that behave poorly. Their performance may just be very much related to an environment that did not allow them to thrive. And understanding that going into it, I have a policy that I've instituted in a couple different organizations I've worked for, that I've been asked to terminate people, as I come into a new team, and I refuse to, because I always refuse to. I'll wait. I need 3 to 6 months to figure it out myself, because I don't know why that person was in the situation they were in. They need to demonstrate success under my leadership style. And if they cannot, then we go on, we figure out new plans. But it's all got to be based on expectations that I know before I'm going to, affect somebody's life in that way. I believe people, terminate themselves truthfully. It's a lot of coaching conversations, a lot of opportunity for them to figure out the path. But how we present ourselves as leaders should give people the opportunity for success, not always scaring them with failure.
How many times, Chris, did you find out when you were given that mandate and you pushed back on it that it's really not the people, it was the process? Right?
Sometimes it's
or it was poor leadership.
Sometimes it's small adjustments.
Yeah, inherently people, right? Again, the subtlety, the nuance, the who knows what kind of experience that leader was creating, or what was happening at corporate at that time. And you said something else in there that really struck me. It's difficult to make decisions that impact another person's mortgage, their children, their spouse, or significant other. It's difficult. And I went through some of that when I had my VP of sales job. We had to do reductions. And this was in, I guess, 01, 02. Because I started the business in 06. And that was one of the other, we talked about pivotal points, to go into a room with 40 people or 50 people, and how cold and clinical legal makes it. These are people you've had lunch with, you've gone to social events with, who you know about their kids, and you've got to stand there as an executive, and you can't say anything except you're standing there. HR makes the announcement, and they get handed a packet. I had to do that 2 times, and that was in the back of my mind when the real pivotal moment happened. Like, wow, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to lift people up. I don't want to push people out. And so again, I applaud you for looking at it that way, because when you're coming in and you're getting a new executive role like you have, there's expectations like, hey, you know what? We got to cut costs. We got to do this. Wait a minute. Costs are human beings.
Yeah. I'm thankful the organization I work for has a people view of things, which is different than I've ever seen.
That's great.
I want to not get too much down a rabbit hole in this thing, but it did strike something with me. You know, you have to ask yourself, and I would challenge any business leader listening to this, challenge yourself about what you're expecting from other people in the first place. Why are you expecting it? Is it for your own ego, to make yourself look like you're bolstering your career? Will your career be just fine if you're not driving people out of the organization for no apparent reason at all? Are you just responding to what somebody else is saying about them, and to look good, you're behaving in a certain way? Or are you authentic in your leadership style because you painted a vision for your team that's going to help them go forward and be more competitive than they've ever been because you were there? And that vision that you're sharing with them makes them, are they fired up by it? Do they believe in it? Have you communicated it correctly? I think that we get sideways with our own egos. And I recently went to a major trade show in our industry, and in my recovery, this was going to be a milestone. And I did a vlog on this on the YouTube channel for Chris and Retro about this, but I was really underwhelmed by the experience because I had this idea that all this work I was doing, that when my comeback would be to go to this major trade show, and I'd walk on the floor and I'd see all these people and they could see that I'd done all these great things. And I got there and I was so underwhelmed by it all because people were just many people were not happy. They're still doing the same thing. They're grinding it out. And here I am working the same industry again, but this time I have a calling and a purpose. That's the totality of Chris.
Yep.
So as leaders, when we're out there working with people, or as individual sales reps, as we're working, yes, we want to be excellent at what we do, and it is our promise to our companies and the paychecks we make to do the best we can do. But we cannot lose sight of who we actually are. And I'm not saying it's an easy journey to find out what your purpose is, but to me, that's balance. Understanding who you are, being authentic who you are, where you are. And that I've learned those lessons over the last 2 years more so than before, because I'm realizing that had I not gone through all that I'd gone through, I wouldn't be able to be the Chris that I actually am. And those are things I think that are important for, as we're talking about relationships and authenticity and the work that we do. There's not only more to the people that work for you, there's more to you. You know, your own satisfaction in life could be more if you looked at it a little differently.
So let's keep going down the rabbit hole. I talk about a principle of connecting performance to a purpose. Mm-hmm. And in the Relationship Engine book, it's the 5th principle. And I ask a group of people to write down the year they were born. Actually, the first thing I had them do is I put a number up on the PowerPoint. If you could picture this number, Chris, a 0, then a decimal point, then 7 zeros to the right of the decimal point, and the number 2. And I have a little fun with the group, and I'll say, what does this number mean? And no one's ever gotten it. It's an 85-year lifespan divided by 4.3 billion, which is the rough age of the Earth according to, astronomers and scientists. So that's how much time we have. And I'll say, okay, now write down the 4 numbers for the year you were born and put a dash next to it. You probably know where I'm going here. When you're 85, what's that dash going to look like? How are you going to feel about that dash? What's most important to you? What's going to be most important to you at 85 when you look back at that? And what's really interesting, I do this with sales professionals who are generally motivated financially in some ways, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of reasons they went into sales. And what I really learned is they didn't go into sales for that. They went into sales to serve people. They think they went in for the money, but they come out with, I'm actually helping people, like you said, solve problems. Mm-hmm. I'll ask a series of questions about their dash. And I have never had one person say, be wealthy beyond all belief. Money never comes up. It's really interesting. Really interesting.
Given the amount of people you've talked to, that is a pretty powerful statement.
Pretty powerful, yep. And thousands I've asked that question to. I've done that exercise with. And I'll reflect back. I'll say, how come no one said money? and they'll start laughing. Well, this is more serious. I'm like, oh, so money isn't serious. Well, it's just the means. Oh, interesting.
It is.
Why'd you go into sales? So I can make more money. But really, is that why you went into sales? And we have this nice little philosophical kind of wrap up to some of the training we do.
You should have the sales leader, before you actually do that question, do the same question like 2 weeks earlier and see if they give the same answer. I'm guaranteeing it's all money. But yeah, we're getting a little short on time, but there's a few things I wanted to make sure that we covered. We've talked a lot about your books. This is one book that you have here, Business Relationships at Last. I was hoping we'd get into the Max story a little bit, but make sure you get this book and learn about Max. Max was a taxi driver that had a high level of service that really impacted Ed's life and changed a lot of what he's working on. But I had a question for you. This is one of the ones that stood right out with me when I looked at your LinkedIn profile. You opened for the Rolling Stones. What is that all about? This is one the audience has to know.
It's interesting. I mean, I've always been a crazy Rolling Stones fan, and a lot of people go, "Really? I would never think you're a Rolling Stones guy, right?" Mm-hmm. I got all the T-shirts from all the concerts. Anyway, so I'm giving a speech at the Bellagio once, and in 2016, and Laurie comes with me, and I go down to prepare for the speech, and it was supposed to be from 3 to 4. It was closing this conference, so it was a closing keynote, and I get there, and the guy who hired me said, "Hey, I got some good news and bad news." I said, "Well, give me the bad news." He says, "You're going to get interrupted at the end of your speech." I said, "Okay, I can manage that. What's the good news?" He goes, "The Rolling Stones are going to be interrupting you." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "On the other side of the ballroom wall," and we all know they're very thin, "the Rolling Stones are doing a rehearsal for a mini tour they're starting." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Get your wife down." So I text her. I go, "Laurie, the Rolling Stones are going to be on the other side of the wall." I give her the whole spiel. She goes, "No way." I go, "Way. Get down." She comes down around 3:45, and I'm finishing the speech, and no Rolling Stones. And now she's stuck. She's in the back of the room. All these suits are coming to say hello to her. She could care less because she just wants to get back to blackjack and her 5 friends that she's got, right? So now she has to witness the book signing, and I'm signing the books, and she's sitting there greeting everyone. Finally, everyone's gone. It's about a half an hour later. And I'm putting some things away. It's just Laurie and me, and the Rolling Stone, the song "Tumbling Dice" comes through the wall. Now my wife's re-impressed with me. Okay, after at that point 35 years of marriage, right? And she's like, "This is so cool." And they're playing. You can hear them talking to each other. Then they do another song. Then they do another song. They're finally finished. She goes, "Wow." She goes, "I guess all kinds of crazy things happened in Vegas," because she had never been to Las Vegas before. I said, "You don't know the half." Anyway, she said, "You know what you should put on your website?" I go, "What?" She goes, "You should put that you opened for the Rolling Stones." Okay. So there's your Rolling Stones story, Chris.
You did. I just was like, I didn't know you did music. That was my first question. I was like, you're telling me this guy's a musician too, and then I find out that. So basically, you are a marriage counselor. You saved your marriage with Rolling Stones. But
I think I did.
Yeah, because you almost blew it with that one. No. As we're wrapping up here, I guess, a couple things, what's next for you? I mean, you're obviously a very driven person. People keep hitting you up with retirement. What's next?
I just finished a movie script, and we're pitching the movie now to different ways to get it made. It's another one of those, hey, let's do a movie. Because, you write a few books, you're like, okay, I did that. And ran into a bookie from the town I grew up in, this town of Frackville, and he's down on his luck now. His name is Jake. He's kind of on the lam, as they say in Colorado, and had some meals with him when I went through there for business, and it motivated me. Hey, this guy, when we were growing up, we hung out in his bookie place, his bookie joint, as he called it. He was really nice to us, and he was kind of a moral force. And we were in our teen years in a very kind of illegal, immoral business. I talked to him during the pandemic. He says, "Hey, back in the day, my business would have been considered essential." So he has a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Jake, I'm going to write something about you and growing up and, kind of a coming of age thing." And over the last 4 years, Chris has taken on a mind of its own. We've got some people who are fairly interested in doing something with it and getting it into theaters or on Netflix. So there's more to come on that. Nice. But if you hear a movie called Bet on Jake, I'm involved with it because that's the working title right now.
Well, you do realize you just disclosed Jake's location and his name. You said he's on the lam in Colorado. So
everybody knows. He's kind of like Sammy the Bull. Everybody knows where he is, but nobody's bothered.
All right. So the movie's actually going to be called Bet on Steve in an undisclosed location. I got you.
Exactly.
We'll close with this. What's the one thing you want my audience know from all of your experiences that you leave them with?
You know, I would go back to worthy intent, that if we could just, you know, all the philosophers, all the spiritual figures, most of them wanted us just to be nice to each other. And then all kinds of dogma and things developed around all that. But ultimately, the message was, just treat each other right. And when I was a kid, there was a movie Bambi, and the rabbit was called Thumper, and he was teaching the young deer who lost his mother, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. I just always think about that, even though I was probably 7 years old when I saw it. And if we could just approach everybody with good intentions, and then believe that they'll have good intentions towards us, I think things would be a lot better for everybody. So hopefully that's a good takeaway as we wrap up here,
No,
Chris.
I appreciate that's a good theme to close things out with. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Make sure you look at this book, Business Relationships at Last. What's going wrong here? I'm through getting into the book so far, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a good read. Got some good practical tips, but some great stories. That's an excellent storyteller for sure. Please join our community here at Chris and Retro on the YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. You can also check out the website, chrisandretro.com. I'm on all the socials at Chris and Retro, but we really do appreciate you joining this. Follow Ed. Check out his movie. Bet on Jake when we see it come out. And in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.